Okay, we literally just got done with the live stream, and I mean, now we are going to have to take that live stream, throw it out the window, because it doesn't matter at all. Everything has changed from this. You got Russell Wilson going over to the Denver Broncos, and first thing I want to say is to everybody in the comment section going, Mason, I don't need to sell DK Metcalf. Did this bum really just say Russell Wilson could possibly leave Seattle? Didn't they hear Russell Wilson say he wants to say? Of course. This is what we've been saying with Russell Wilson. This is what we were saying with Jalen Hurts, that we can't trust the coaches 100%. I mean, whatever the media tells us is not always going to be right. So I want to run a short little victory lap here. And in this video, let's take an in-depth look on how we should be adjusting. And what's really funny is, I mean, y'all know we literally just talked about this in our live stream where we had the draft. I came out and said, oh, well, it looks like we have to bump down Judy. We have to bump down possibly Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant just slightly, because if you don't have the possibility that Aaron Rodgers goes there, hey, we need to be lowering our expectations on those receivers that I've been low on for a very long time. But at the beginning of this offseason, I said, hell, there's a chance Russell Wilson goes there. There's a chance Aaron Rodgers. There's a chance Deshaun Watson goes to Denver. Maybe now is finally the time to go out there and buy Judy. Now, maybe it's finally the time to go buy Cortland Sutton. So we need to dive in, look at where we are going to be moving Javonte Williams, Judy, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, KJ Hamler, DK Metcalf, and Jayan and I literally just got done debating and arguing if we were going to go Allen Robinson or Tyler Lockett in our current dispersal draft. And I was throwing a little fit saying, I don't want Allen Robinson. I want Tyler Lockett. I need Tyler Lockett. We made that selection probably 15 minutes ago, probably 5 minutes before the trade was announced. So it is what it is. Let's go through and let's pull up my current set of locals rankings and talk about where we are going to be adjusting. And I need to have your opinion with these as well. So of course, please let me know down there in the comment section where you are moving these players, how much of an impact this actually makes. And of course, if you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. Only if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, I'd imagine, because we have Russell Wilson in the title here. There are probably some people watching this that don't play Dynasty. If you don't play Dynasty, you're not going to like any other videos on this channel. We talk Dynasty Fantasy Football every single day exclusively. So you can still watch it, hear about Russell Wilson, hear about the Denver Broncos. But I'm telling you right now, you're not going to like this channel beyond that. So if I pull up my Dynasty rankings currently, I loved Russell Wilson, as I always have, and he's been in that range of someone like a Matthew Stafford where we are willing to go out and pay up for the veteran quarterback, even though they're past their prime, because clearly we have seen this time and time again. If these quarterbacks are able to make it to 38, 39 years old, I mean, really, age is literally just a number in the case of Russell Wilson. We don't need to be worried about it in the slightest. So I previously had Russell Wilson as the quarterback 11 in the same tier as Trevor Lawrence and Aaron Rodgers, but we had Russell Wilson ranked ahead of those players. We've been advocating for taking someone like Justin Fields and trading him for Russell Wilson. I don't think anybody's going to give us hate for that at this point. So I'm going to be moving Russell Wilson not any higher in our rankings, because I think it will be hard to move Russell Wilson ahead of Matthew Stafford. But if he's getting a supposed upgrade with the overall roster around him, which I think we can say most likely Denver's going to be a more well-rounded roster, even though DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett may be slightly better than what you have in Denver at the receiver position. If we're also accounting for running back, if we're accounting for tight end, if we're accounting for offensive line, I think that this will be a bump in the right direction for Russell Wilson, getting away from a team that really hasn't allowed him to just go out there and go all in on just being a pass-happy quarterback. So we're going to have Russell Wilson at quarterback 11. Now, I had Javonte Williams at running back 5 previously, and then I had to move him behind Breece Hall based on the situation he was going to be in, as well as Breece Hall's NFL Combine. But now, despite me going through, making a video saying Breece Hall is a top 5 running back in Dynasty, literally uploading that yesterday. There's no way in hell I can have Breece Hall ahead of Javonte Williams. So now we're going to be moving Javonte Williams up to the running back 5. And you know what? We can't stop there. We have to move him ahead of Christian McCaffrey as well. I think Javonte Williams is going to be the running back 4 in Dynasty, because if you're looking at Javonte, he's I'm assuming still only 21 years old, because he was the youngest running back drafted in last year's draft. He profiles to be a 3-down option with no Melvin Gordon this upcoming season. I mean, Javonte Williams, this is going to be exciting. Probably the best running back Russell Wilson's played with since Marshawn Lynch. Now, if we're going over looking at what we are going to have at receiver, this is where we have to make some massive updates. Now, if we're pulling up where I had DK Metcalf in our rankings, I was already lower on DK Metcalf than pretty much anybody else. Where you see DK Metcalf going in the second round of startup drafts, I had him ranked as our Dynasty wide receiver 13. So a high-end wide receiver 2 in Dynasty. That's a lot higher than his ADP. But he has to fall. Now, I haven't updated these just yet. I'll be completely honest. I've been lazy. Obviously, had Calvin Ridley with a year-long suspension. We had Calvin Ridley in the tier below him alongside DJ Moore, Chris Godwin. So Calvin Ridley is definitely going to have to drop down considerably. We'll get that update going later today as well. But I want to focus in on the Seattle and Denver players instead. DK Metcalf has to fall. We already had him pretty damn low, but he has to go lower. We're moving DK Metcalf. He has to go behind DJ Moore. We already had him. I would say most people have DK Metcalf in that CeeDee Lamb range with CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle, Deebo Samuel. We already had him behind those guys, so he doesn't have to move behind those options. And we already had him behind Deontay, Stephon Diggs, T. Higgins, so I know most people would be moving him behind those receivers. We don't have to, so that's what I'm saying. Maybe it's not going to sound like we're dropping him that much, but it's because we were already very low on him. But we are going to move DK Metcalf below DJ Moore. The question is, right now, who are you preferring between Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, Drake London? Seriously. Who are you preferring between those rookie wide receivers and DK Metcalf? I know it's crazy to say this right now, and that's why I'm talking through this out loud. That's why I'm trying to get your opinion, because I definitely value your opinion highly. I would have a very hard time moving one of those rookie wide receivers before we see the capital in the landing spot ahead of DK Metcalf based on what we have seen with Metcalf so far. So I'm going to be keeping DK Metcalf ahead of those rookie wide receivers, but I am going to have them in the same tier because based on the NFL draft, I could see us eventually ranking those players in any given order. So yeah, we have someone in the chat says DK Metcalf or Brandon Ayuk. DK Metcalf still going ahead of Ayuk. So let's move DJ Moore. Let's move Chris Godwin ahead of Metcalf. We'll move DK Metcalf down to the wide receiver 16, where we previously had him as the wide receiver 14. And we'll move him down another tier where he's going to be alongside Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, and Drake London. And now scrolling down, let's pull up someone we just said you had to move down because Aaron Rodgers signed. We said you had to move him down slightly because that was one potential option for Jerry Judy to get that upgrade at the quarterback position. Now, Jerry Judy, clearly, and I don't think anybody can make the argument, he is now more valuable, and a lot of people already had him in this range. A lot of people already prefer Jerry Judy over these wide receivers, but I'm updating my own rankings. He's more valuable than Darnell Mooney, more valuable than Amari Cooper, more valuable than Amara St. Brown, Chris Olave. I mean, I would prefer Jerry Judy over Brandon Ayuk at this point. I think he has to jump up at least into tier 9. I would prefer Jerry Judy over Michael Thomas. I would prefer Jerry Judy over Calvin Ridley, as much as that pains me to say it, with Calvin Ridley being one of my favorite dynasty trade targets 2 weeks ago. But obviously things have changed. And I would prefer Jerry Judy over Elijah Moore. Maybe I'm overreacting here. I would prefer Jerry Judy over Michael Pittman. Yeah, we have to move Jerry Judy up a ton. Jerry Judy's now a top 24 wide receiver in Dynasty. I'm going to be moving Jerry Judy, the wide receiver 24. I'll figure out exactly where Michael Pittman, Calvin Ridley are sliding a little bit later. But I think Jerry Judy needs to be in the same tier as DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, Jerry Judy, and Keenan Allen. Okay, so let's scroll down. We'll get to Cortland Sutton. I know a lot of people are saying, We have Jordan Love on the move here. Mike Williams just got extended. We literally talked about Mike Williams most likely getting extended 20 minutes ago. We can talk about those other updates at the end of this, but this video is simply about the main deal we're going to be looking at. And the main impact is one of the most efficient quarterbacks over the past decade in the NFL is going over to the Denver Broncos, a team that, has had probably one of the best supporting casts in the NFL over the past 2 to 3 seasons without a quarterback to get them the ball. This is massive. I don't want to understate this. Okay, so Jerry Judy, wide receiver 24 in Dynasty. We moved him from the wide receiver 35 to the wide receiver 24. Y'all know I have never liked Cortland Sutton really at all. Maybe back in 2018 before he got the hype of Emmanuel Sanders and Emmanuel Sanders getting injured, Demaryius Thomas being moved. So Cortland Sutton's going to be a harder player for me to look at and not be a little bit biased with this. I had Cortland Sutton as a wide receiver 5 in Dynasty. Obviously, that's not going to be able to maintain. He's going to have to jump guys like Gabriel Davis, Christian Kirk, George Pickens, David Bell, Juju Smith-Schuster. He's going to have to jump Robert Woods. He's probably going to have to jump Jahan Dotson. Does he jump Jameson Williams, Jahan Dotson? They're going to be round 1 wide receivers in this year's NFL draft. No, I don't think we can move him that far. He is most likely going to be right ahead of Robert Woods for us in these rankings and right behind Jahan Dotson and Jameson Williams. A big thing with Sutton is I understand that a lot of people in Dynasty, they want to assume that Cortland Sutton's been some dominant wide receiver in the past because he's big. He looks like an alpha wide receiver when he's on the field. And if we remember his second year in the NFL, he was actually a Pro Bowl wide receiver. He went to the Pro Bowl and he was a top 3 round Dynasty startup pick. But it was never really warranted. He had over 1,000 receiving yards in that second season, but it was kind of like the Terry McLaurin situation in his second year where, he was playing on a bad team, but at the end of the day, they had nobody to take targets away from Cortland Sutton, and he stayed healthy the entire year. So if you were looking at counting stats, Cortland Sutton was fine, but if you were looking at a per game basis, and keep in mind, this is all off the top of my head, you can feel free to fact check me, but I'm almost certain that I'm correct with everything here. Cortland Sutton was a high-end wide receiver 3, hovering around the wide receiver 25 on a per game basis that season, and that really is not moving the needle in fantasy. However, he was only 2 years in the NFL at that time. He was big, athletic receiver that clearly, had upside. So people were willing to just vault him up into an elite range with his dynasty value before he really showed us nearly enough to get that done. Then he suffers, a horrible injury, and every single game that he's been on the field with Jerry Judy has dominated targets. Jerry Judy has dominated production. So I don't want to assume that Sutton all of a sudden is going to be a player that we can roll out there every single week in fantasy. He's also older than most people expect. He stayed all 4 years at SMU. If I'm correct, let me pull this up and just fact check myself a little bit here to make sure. Yeah, but Cortland Sutton, I believe, going to be 27. Yeah, will be 27 this season. He is Jerry Judy's 22 as a comparison, and Jerry Judy's already dominating him last year. I think that Jerry Judy is probably the guy that we need to move up. I would probably sell Cortland Sutton off of this news, especially if we could say, take Cortland Sutton and a second round pick and trade that package and try to get to a 2023 first. Of course, you're never going to be able to sell Sutton for a first round pick straight up, but if we are able to package it with the second, maybe that's going to be a deal we can pull off. Now, let's go over to this Seattle receiver. Jane and I literally just took probably 5 minutes before this trade was made. Let's go to Tyler Lockett. With Lockett, going to be 30 this upcoming season. With Lockett has been, incredibly productive over the past 3 years. This is why I was literally just making an argument to take Tyler Lockett over Allen Robinson in a startup draft. Clearly, if we could have that one back, I would. That one's on me. But if we're looking at a per game basis for Tyler Lockett this past year, a top 24 wide receiver, right behind Mike Williams, DeAndre Hopkins, Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, Hunter Renfrow. If we're going to 2020, we're going to see a very similar thing. Tyler Lockett, I mean, a top 24 wide receiver right behind Robert Woods, Mike Evans, Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson. These are all per game numbers. He was the wide receiver 16. Going back to 2019, I mean, here with Tyler Lockett, this is DK Metcalf's rookie season. Right on that borderline, a top 24 wide receiver, literally the wide receiver 24. So Lockett's had 3 seasons in a row of top 24 production. However, it's hard to imagine that the replacement that they are getting in Seattle is actually going to be able to be half as efficient as Russell Wilson was, specifically with the deep targets that Tyler Lockett thrives off of, especially if this is going to be an offense that's a little more run heavy. I think a lot of people are saying it's Drew Lock going over there. Okay, so this must be just a full-on punt mode by the Seattle Seahawks. If they're trading for Lock, let me pull this up to see if we have any of the official details on this trade. But if we're talking about where we move Tyler Lockett, oh my God. Tyler Lockett easily has to move behind Jameson Williams. He has to move behind Jahan Dotson. He has to move behind Robert Woods, behind Brandon Cooks. They're going to be more productive this upcoming season. So we're going to have Lockett and Sutton all of a sudden essentially ranked back-to-back alongside wide receivers like David Bell and George Pickens. I probably would even prefer, I don't know if I can say I prefer the rookies over Lockett. I know everybody watching this live stream right now would prefer George Pickens over Tyler Lockett. But at this point, do you want Gabriel Davis? Do you want Christian Kirk or Tyler Lockett? Oh, this is getting ugly. Okay, before we talk Noah Fant, let me pull up the exact details of this because, of course, we really need to figure out who the starting quarterback is going to be here. Okay, let me click on Shefty. Seattle got back a defensive lineman, locker room leader, yada, yada, yada. Drew Lock, multiple picks. Okay, so essentially it's Drew Lock. They got back Drew Lock and picks. Oh my gosh. Okay, where does Seattle actually select in this year's draft? Okay, so Seattle Seahawks, they traded the pick to New York. I completely forgot about that. So they're not going to really have an option unless they make another deal. I guess actually they're probably getting Denver's 9th pick. I'm an idiot. Yeah, they're probably getting Denver's 9th pick in the deal. That hasn't been confirmed, but I'd imagine that's, I mean, Matthew Stafford fetched 2 first-round picks last offseason. I mean, you had Trey Lance essentially costing 3 first-round picks. I'd imagine that 9th pick overall from Denver is going over to Seattle. So Seattle is probably going to end up bringing in someone like Malik Willis. Yeah, so I would imagine that Malik Willis is probably going to be coming over and playing alongside DK Metcalf, playing alongside Lockett. And I love Malik Willis from a fantasy perspective, from a dynasty fantasy football perspective, as I've talked in length, especially like 2020 back with Jalen Hurts. Rushing upside, rushing upside, rushing upside, draft them aggressively. This past season with Trey Lance, rushing upside, rushing upside, rushing upside. Draft them aggressively. They can be elite fantasy options while being bad for the pieces around them in their respective NFL offenses because the passing volume may not be there and they may cannibalize touchdowns at the goal line. So if Malik Willis goes, of course it will be better than Drew Lock. Anything's going to be better than Drew Lock. But if they take Malik Willis, it's not going to be great for Metcalf. It's not going to be great for, it will still be a massive downgrade, almost regardless of who they're able to get in this year's NFL draft. Okay. Swizz says, okay, people are saying Noah Fant now in Seattle. So Albert O is skyrocketing up. And if Noah Fant's going over to Seattle, that's just more reason to move down DK Metcalf. That's more reason to move down Tyler Lockett. Noah Fant's a tight end that is going to command targets 100%. Let me make sure y'all aren't pulling my leg here. Fate says my Fant and this is not a good move for Fant. I'll tell you that right now. The target competition is going to be similar with Lockett and Metcalf. The efficiency of the offense is going to be way down. Noah Fant is going to fall from being our tight end 9 in Dynasty. Most likely, he has to be behind Dawson Knox. He probably has to be behind Cole Kmet. He's going to be in that tier with Mike Gesicki, Dalton Schultz. And Albert O, I currently have him in the same tier as Rob Gronkowski and Tyler Higbee. Give me Albert O over Gronk, Higbee, Ertz, Henry, McBride. Albert O jumps up to being in that Irv Smith Jr. tier directly behind Dalton Schultz and Mike Gesicki. I mean, we've seen Albert O be very effective through the first 2 years in his NFL career. This is crazy. Sebastian says, sorry if this was covered, but how are we thinking about Jerry Judy versus Cortland Sutton now? I wish I had these statistics pulled up. I mean, so I could really look on the on-off. We did an in-depth breakdown. Okay, I will say if you want to look at an in-depth breakdown on how I'm viewing Jerry Judy and how I'm viewing Cortland Sutton going into this past year, going into this offseason, we made a video with the possibility of a trade like this happening. And I actually look at the on-off splits by Cortland Sutton and look at the production from Sutton with and without Jerry Judy on the field. And it is unbelievable to the extent that you just had Jerry Judy out there dominating with his target share and dominating production overall. I'll send this link out. I believe, yeah, it says the title of the video is I'm finally buying now, massive discount. And it's where I say, yeah, I've always been lower on these receivers than everybody else. Why did I just hit download that video? I just need to copy the link. I've always been lower on these receivers than everybody else. But now that there's the possibility that they get a new quarterback this offseason, I'm all in because the talent's there. We just always hated them because of the situation. But we throw some shade on Cortland Sutton in that video as well. Let me grab that if I can get a goddamn link. Get shareable link. Okay, so we'll send that out. Ben says, look at Twitter. Noah Fant confirmed. Okay, so I got a lot of work that I'm going to be doing on these overall rankings. Please, for the love of God, leave a comment letting me know what your thoughts are because obviously your opinion is worth just as much as mine, if not more. So please, please, please let me know. And of course, you can make a post over there on our page on Locals if y'all are wanting to join the community as well. We'll have all our rankings up to date there at the same time. I'll spam that in the chat. But I have videos to make. I just did, believe, over an hour-long live stream, and I am just so caught off guard. Hopefully, maybe I can get y'all an in-depth video breaking down the situation. Tomorrow, of course, go down there, drop a like. Let's get this live stream over 100 likes right now. Subscribe to the channel. Give me your thoughts in the comment section, and I'll have these rankings up to date with the Aaron Rodgers news, with the Mike Williams news, with the Calvin Ridley news, with the Russell Wilson news. I promise you I'll have that done by the end of the day. Let me have a couple hours to let it sink in. I'll give you all my instant updates probably around 7 p.m. Eastern. And then probably don't be surprised if I'm tweaking those throughout the rest of the week as well. And please don't ask Cortland Sutton versus Jerry Judy. It is Jerry Judy up on the moon. Cortland Sutton, a chasm below. I mean, Jerry Judy dominated Cortland Sutton last year at pretty much 4 years younger. But thank you again. Hope you all have a great day and hope we get to see you out with a video tomorrow.